Hello everyone and welcome back to Barcelona for today's F124 Hotlap and the setup guide. Yes, we're back in Europe, of course, after a trip to Montreal here on one of the toughest tracks inside this game. And it's a tough track inside F124 for one reason. Tyre temperatures here are near impossible to manage. Anyone that's obviously been keeping up with our career mode series on this game will know just how difficult it is to keep the tyres in a smooth operating window. The front left around this circuit will absolutely get obliterated if you try to run anything close to a time trial setup when you move into a Grand Prix. So today, although I think this setup is still quite good for one lap pace, it is very much compromised to try and make sure that you can obviously survive a Grand Prix as well around this circuit. Of course, if you're new around here as well, please do make sure you get yourself subscribed. We are less than 100 subs now away from 10k. I cannot thank you guys enough for the continued support on this series, and I always continue to hope as well that all these setups are helping you out. But yeah, let's head out then onto the Barcelona circuit. Of course, as always, timestamps will be linked down below as well. And yeah, let's talk you through a lap here of Catalunya. So a lap then here at Barcelona, it chucks you out of the final right-hander and you have got a monstrous run all the way back down towards turn 1. Of course, we've seen time and time again, IRL, just how important it is to get a good start. This place is very, very difficult to overtake at. So getting a good start, maybe claiming a couple of freebies, is really, really useful. As you make your way down, though, into that first corner, you're going to be all the way up in 8th gear. Try and get the outside wheels over the curbing. You want to be looking just after the 100 meter board. If you're in race trim, you're going to be braking a little bit before, about 90 meters out. Otherwise, you're going to be braking just as you go over this little grey strip in towards the first corner there. 4th gear on the way down. Try and flick it in for a late apex. There are plenty of sausage curbs around this circuit, and I would also say try to avoid the inside curbing as well there, because it is serrated. Mount the second curb though up into 5th gear. Again, be careful to avoid the sausage curb. Allow the car to drift out wide, but try to rotate it over slightly before you head through the long turn 3 there. Up into 6th gear. You really want to try and not take too much steering through here. Of course, it's basically, I mean, it's completely flat out. So the car kind of treats it as a straight line. And, you know, from a data standpoint, you kind of treat it as a straight line. So give yourself the shortest run, but also the run of least resistance. So you're going to be up into 7th gear on the exit. And then you're basically aiming towards the outside of the circuit, just after the 50 meter board, braking down into sector 2 there. I like to go 4th gear. I don't really mind. I don't really kind of have a consistent line. Sometimes I try and hold it narrowly on the exit. Other times I allow the car to run wide, but you want to avoid that curb. Otherwise, it will unsettle the car once more. Then up into 5th gear as you make your way out, right up towards the side, and then back over to 6th. Get the car back over on the right-hand side, and you can see just as you reach the 50 meter mark, the track actually starts falling away from you. You want to be braking just before that. You want to get the weight over the front on this year's game before you head down into that undulation. Otherwise, you're going to find yourself locking that left front wheel, and it's already going to be absolutely screaming in terms of temperature as well. There, I like to make a late downshift into 2nd gear, really try and flick the car in, square the exit off, and then short shift back into 3rd gear as you try to power down on the exit. You can use all of the curbing on the outside, but be very, very careful that you don't run wide out on the grass. Otherwise, you're going to compromise your run down the hill there. Don't bother bringing the car all the way to the left, as you're going to be opening up the exit for the right-hand side. They're braking just as you go out onto this curb, and then down 2 gears for a very, very late apex there. Be mighty careful of understeer through here. You do not want to be going out over those sausage curbs. They're not as bad as they've been on the last couple of games, but they are definitely still noticeable as we make our way back up the hill there. Get the car back over to the left. Again, you're going to be back up in 6th gear for the completely flat out corner of Campsa. If you're struggling with tyre wear or you're on very worn tyres, you might just have to blend the throttle and then open up the DRS and back into 7th gear as you make your way off the corner. You get a small chance to breathe as you try to bring the car back over to the right-hand side, ready for a very, very tricky hairpin corner that kind of is tight on the entry and then opens out, but then feels like it narrows up again on the exit there. You want to be braking at the 100 meter board, or obviously the other reference I like to use is where the paint suddenly turns green. Of course, you'll be in 8th gear on the way in. I like to go all the way down into 3rd gear. Try to claim a later apex. Allow the car to run a bit wide on the exit, and then as you try and rotate the car, keep it away from that white line on the outside. get the car back into fourth, take all of the curb available on the inside there, leave it in fourth gear, go right up to the red line, and then just a nudge of brake as you make your way through this right-hand hairpin there. The back end will want to step away from you, so you've got to be really, really careful. Kind of just cover the brake and the throttle on the way out as you try to allow the car to run wide on the exit. Back up into fifth gear, and then up into sixth there. You want to be just turning in before you get to the end of the curb there, and then try to avoid the inside curb through these final couple of corners. Seventh gear, ready for the final turn. If you're in race trim, you might want to be downshifting just once through this final corner. But again, actually avoid the curbs on the inside. That little bump can really actually take a lot of speed out of the car. Seventh gear on the exit. Get the car back over on the left-hand side there. Use the curbing. And then as you cross the start-finish line, that is going to be a lap of the Barcelona track. It is a really, really difficult circuit, like I said in F1 24. In qualifying trim, you've got to be careful of the back-end oversteer. In race trim, like I said, it's that front left tyre. It will absolutely give you a lot of grief around this venue as well there. But, you know, trying to make sure you're confident in the circuit. It's a track that is kind of high risk, high reward. It's old school. You know, there isn't any runoff outside of the curbing as well, which I quite like. But Barcelona, I've just never really gelled with either. But let's head back to the garage then, and we'll take a look through the setup. Well, I really set myself the target time of trying to get under the 1 minute 12 mark there. So you can see we're about a second and a half away from the top esports drivers. Apparently John Evans has done this twice for some reason. But yeah, I mean, like I said, though, obviously this is a race setup. So, you know, you're going to be compromising quite a lot here, actually, to make sure the car is in good nick, ready for a Grand Prix. And, of course, obviously, as we take a look at the aerodynamics, 41.38, you want that final corner to be just about flat out, maybe with a downshift. And, of course, obviously, that will give you the speed to carry down in towards that first corner there. 45.50 on the differentials, and then 30 on the engine braking. I'm finding the more testing I do on this game, the more this tends to suit me personally. So, you know, you might want to try it a little bit different. I've seen a few people actually running the on-throttle diff higher around this circuit, which might work for you, but 45.50 is what's worked for me here, of course. Again, where this circuit, you know, is very rear-end limited, you know, in the traction zones, but of course, obviously, the main issue is still the fronts here in terms of wear and temperature. You kind of want to compromise the setup to be a little bit more oversteery, because, of course, you don't want to face understeer on the exits of those corners, because, again, that front left, I cannot stress it enough, will absolutely make you want to pull your hair out. Minus 3.2, minus 1.9 on the cambers, and then 0.09, 0.08 on the toe angle. Again, this is slightly compromised to try and suit a race car. You know, it will potentially reduce the responsiveness of the front end slightly, but of course, obviously, we'll make sure that you can keep those tyres in good check. 30.16 on the front and rear suspension, 14.12 on the anti-roll bars, and then 25.68. For a track that's been around in Formula 1 for more than 30 years now, Barcelona is still surprisingly smooth, which means obviously you can get away with a bit lower ride heights. Obviously, suspension settings, though, again, like we see everywhere on this game, you want a lot of emphasis on having quite a firm front end, so you've got to be really, really careful as well with that. And you can see, yeah, 14.12 is some of the most aggressive anti-roll bar presets we've used throughout this game up to this point. 97.54 on the brake bias. Again, that's just my default on this game, but I would say if you're really struggling with front locking in a couple of places, I want to nurse those front tyres. Maybe lower the brake pressure and move the bias towards the rear of the car, but 97.54 I found works for me. This is the big one, though. I've been testing this, trying to find something that works, you know, gives you a good balance. 25.7 was, for me, the lowest I could go with the tyre pressures without then getting those fronts overheating too badly. 21.5 on the rear. Again, you can run those pretty normal because it's not so limited. If you find that you're getting nowhere near the tyre temperature warnings, then you can afford to drop these down even lower. But obviously, if you find that you're still overheating the fronts, I would say up these to like 26 PSI. But like I said, you know, this is what worked for me. This track is really going to take some testing to kind of get it fine-tuned for what works for you as well. But it's really important that you do. Otherwise, you're going to be nursing a set of tyres for 33 very boring laps around this circuit as well there. But yeah, hopefully this setup has helped you out. If you have enjoyed, please do make sure to leave a like, get yourself subscribed as well. And I'm going to leave you guys then with a hot lap here from Barcelona.